All right, we are recording. We will now start the, we now call to order the City Council regular meeting for January 27th, 2020, 6 p.m. Please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. The invocation will be given by Pastor Dave Lawson.
Let us pray. Our Father, we come to you again tonight with grateful hearts. We thank you for our beautiful community. We thank you that you've provided wise leaders that care for each one. We ask tonight for your grace, for your mercy, for your blessings upon each thing to be said and done. It is in Jesus' name we pray, and amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. We thank you again, Pastor. Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Councilmember Gray?
Here.
Councilmember Sutherland?
Here.
Councilmember Bernard?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Spurlock?
Here.
Mayor Anderson?
Here.
We have a quorum.
First up, we have a proclamation for the Avon Park School Choice 2020.
Could I say something before we start?
Yes, sir.
Just last Monday, Maria and Brenda and I attended the Martin Luther King Day breakfast, and it was a very good breakfast, a very informative speakers and unbelievable entertainment by the youth choir. I'd just like to ask if we could maybe bring those kids here to do our invocation in a song, because and just show the community the talent that we have, and just say to all those that missed that, need to mark their calendars for next year and not miss that breakfast.
Who normally asks for the, we have one pastor locally that asks the other pastors to come give the invocation.
Yeah.
I'm sure, was there a particular group or?
only
Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Seventh-day Adventist Church, okay.
One of their groups.
I'm sure they'd be more than happy to come give us an invocation.
Okay, and I'm sure Brenda can work that out with them, and I just think it would be a very entertaining, informative situation.
Will do.
Very good.
Very good.
All right. Proclamation, Jerry.
Whereas all children in Avon Park should have access to the highest quality education possible, and whereas Avon Park recognizes the important role that an effective education plays in preparing all students in Avon Park to be successful adults, and whereas quality education is critically important to the economic vitality of Avon Park, and whereas Avon Park is home to a multitude of high-quality public and non-public schools from which parents can choose for their children, in addition to families who educate their children in the home, and whereas educational variety not only helps in diversity our economy, but also enhances the vibrancy of our community, and whereas Avon Park has many high-quality teaching professionals in all types of school settings who are committed to educating our children, and whereas School Choice Week is celebrated across the country by millions of students, parents, educators, schools, and organizations to raise awareness of the need for effective educational options. Now, therefore, I, Garrett Anderson, Mayor of the Avon Park, do hereby recognize January 26th through February 1st, 2020 as Avon Park School Choice Week, and I call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens. In testimony, whereas I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the Great Seal of the City of Avon Park in Avon Park, Florida, on this 27th day of January 2020.
Thank you, Jerry. Signed copy is here for staff. Moving on, under citizens and outside agencies, item number 5, we have Tom Macklin. The voting tabulation and irregularities from city manager. Tom, please give your name and address.
My name is Tom Macklin. I reside at 609 East Main Street here in Avon Park.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Before I start, I want to make sure that everyone knows that I have already gone over this information with Mayor Anderson. I wanted to give him advanced knowledge of what I was going to come up and speak about this evening, so that at least the mayor wouldn't be caught off guard. So I'm going to read a prepared statement, which I will submit for public record, so everybody will have access to it. I only have this one copy, but it will be available to whoever wants it
Very good.
at a later date. Says, as a member of the committee appointed and tasked by the Avon Park City Council to review applications and resumes received by city manager hopefuls, I find it my responsibility to share my concerns regarding what I consider to have been a severely flawed process. The process itself did not bear itself out in a fair manner, and I'm concerned that because of this, it could place Avon Park in a negative light or possibly worse. At the initial meeting of the committee, and after great discussion, those in attendance unanimously agreed that each member would review all of the applications and resumes, dismiss any that did not either meet the advertised qualifications or previous work experience criteria, select 5, and assign a numerical ranking to each for tabulation purposes, with number 1 being our personal favorite and 5 being our least. It was also agreed that, after being tabulated, the committee would forward the top 5 candidates to the City Council with no ranking and in no particular order. I'll stop right here. Councilwoman Ms. Sutherland was at that meeting, and I'm sure she'll concur at least that that was the conversation. It was a prolonged conversation, and that was what we had corporately decided on doing. That stated, the agreed upon rules were not adhered to, and I believe that as a result, this entire process is circumspect, and the recommendation to City Council should be limited to only those ballots that were submitted by the individuals who followed the previously agreed upon rules for submission and calibration. 6 of the 10 ballots did not adhere to the mutually agreed upon criteria. 4 included either too few or too many candidate names and should be thrown out as either an undervote or an overvote. And while it is a fact that one of the overvotes does have a separation between what is obviously an attempt to identify the top 5 from the additional 2 on their ballot, none of the 7 received a numerical ranking, make it impossible to properly tabulate a final result. Additionally, 2 other ballots should also be thrown out. While they did contain only 5 candidates, none of them were ranked 1 through 5. That leaves you with 4 out of the 10 ballots that were probably filled out and submitted. The problem, however, doesn't end there. City staff, in their effort to tabulate all of the ballots, assigned the same numerical value to each name, that being 1. They also counted every name on every ballot without regard to the number of candidate names on each ballot. Example, one ballot had 2 names on it, while another had 6, and 2 others each had 7. All of the extra votes were counted and included in the faulty tabulation process. I submit to you that in order for the city manager selection process to be fair and impartial, that there is only one thing to do, that being only the 4 ballots that included 5 candidate names, no more and no less, and had numerical ranking assigned to each name, be the only ballots used for tabulation and the citizen committee recommendation process. This process will change the recommendation from the committee slightly, but not significantly, by assigning a value of 5 to each number 1 pick, 4 to number 2, and so on in descending order. You can get an accurate score for each properly submitted candidate on those 4 ballots. The result would be as follows: Tim Day, 11 points. And that was 3 votes. Mike Brillhart, 6 points, 2 votes. Lyndon Bonner, 6 points, 3 votes. Mark Schrader, 5 points, 1 vote. There are 5 others tied with 4 points each. They are Jeff Orris, who received 1 vote, Michelle Orton, who received 2 votes, Scott Randall, 1 vote, David Tapia, 1 vote, and Phyllis Grover, 2 votes. You will note that 3 that I just mentioned of the top 4 right there were included in the 5 that were recommended to the city council. Mark Schrader was not. Jeff Orris and Phyllis Grover, both who were included in the original recommendation of 5, are now 2 of the 5 tied with 4 points each. Now here's an important note, full disclosure on my part. My ballot was one of the 4 that was filled out and submitted that adhered to the unanimously agreed upon criteria at the original meeting. Mark Schrader was not one of my 5 selections. My bringing this to your attention is not an effort to see that he is included or that anyone else is excluded from the recommendation previously provided to council. This is an effort on my part to make sure that the selection process for the new city manager is above reproach from beginning to end, and that any potential problem that might arise due to a flawed process be averted. In closing, I personally appreciate each individual who took the time to submit a job application and resume. Likewise, I also appreciate each citizen who volunteered to participate in this very important selection process. As a former elected official in Avon Park, I know how hard it is to get people to step up and say, "I will." My focus here, though, is the integrity of the process. It is in no way intended either to shine a light or cast a shadow on any of the citizen participants. So I just want to, as a matter of record, let you know how I feel about how things sorted out. Each person was to choose 5 and rank them. That didn't happen in each case. You all have criteria established as to how you vote. You each get 1. I mean, it would be unreasonable to think that, I'll pick on Mr. Spurlock, you don't get 2 votes when you vote on a proclamation, or you don't get 2 votes, or if you have to abstain, you have to justify the reason that you abstain and don't vote. So these are my concerns. I will submit this, and I stand for any questions if there are any, but I just think you need to look at how this bore itself out. And I do understand that the conversation was that the council, in addition to the recommendation that came from the citizen committee, would also have the ability to add some to that list for consideration. I don't know what all you all are doing, but I wanted to get this out so that you had the ability to understand what happened and to give it either consideration or not. But it was on my heart that I needed to point out the flaw in what I believe was a process that didn't bear itself out properly.
Okay.
I was at that meeting also, Tom, and I probably would agree with the way, I guess the first meeting they suggested to do it, but when they talked about putting in their votes at the meeting, it seemed to me like the majority of people didn't care about a numbering system. So if you went by the second meeting where you came up with tabulation, I mean, it seemed like the majority of people didn't care to put it in order, because obviously that's proven by what you just told us. So it sort of looks like they changed their opinion from the first meeting to say that they would tabulate it 1 through 5 or 5 through 1, and then they all kind of act like they didn't seem like they cared by doing it. They just want to put their names in. So which way do you go, by the way they originally decided they would do it, or by the way they decided to do it the day they voted?
Well, I would certainly hope that it would be the guidance that was agreed upon at the initial meeting, because that's what everyone spent weeks, or should have been spending weeks on fine tuning. Additionally, without regard to whether they were ranked 1 through 5, that doesn't exempt anybody that decides, well, I'm going to go ahead and submit 6 or 7. Even if you submit 2 against the whole, that ends up giving greater value to the 2, in as much as if they had given the other 3 as they were directed to at the original meeting. Again, ranking set aside, there's fewer for them to be measured against, which actually counts for more for only those 2. So, I mean, if you want to go with 5, that's 5, but we still have 4 out of the 10 votes that either were 2 or 6 or 7. That goes completely against the guidance of 5 without regard to ranking. So I would just submit that. That's for your consideration. I know that you all are going to do as a body what you feel is best for the city, but I felt it was necessary to point out the fact that the guidance that we all agreed upon in the original meeting was not at all what was followed, and the tabulation was skewed, not only because there was no consideration given to the 1 through 5 ranking as far as personal favorites to less, but counting all of the extra votes as well. So,
The only other thing I'd like to say is that from attending that meeting, what I saw was 10 people that seem like they put an extreme amount of effort in their decision-making, making phone calls and doing research. And I think that overall, the Citizens Committee did a fantastic job, and I think that they should be commended for that. And I also appreciate your opinion tonight, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Macklin. No, I didn't have a question. Does any council members have any questions or comments on this? Any suggestions on what to do to rectify the situation?
Well, I think that it was, I think they tried. I think we tried. I think it was all done in good faith on both sides, and, the outcome, I think, will be in good faith as well. I know they went through a lot. I attended both of their meetings, the initial one as well, and there were some ambivalences, if that's such a word, in regards to how to approach it, but it was never, I didn't understand it to be a numeric score like you're explaining. I thought it was just gonna be, how many people wanted this person, how many people wanted that one, and it was just based out of 5. That's how I interpreted that whole thing. So this is very novel to me for you explaining it that way. Perhaps if we ever have to do it again, we just have to set, more boundaries so that they can fit within that parameter, or have it explicitly for them. But I really do believe that it was done in good faith regardless of how the outcome came. It didn't sound to me like anyone was angry or upset about the process itself. But I understand what you're saying now.
Yeah.
Mr. Macklin?
And if I may, I don't necessarily agree with your view of how the first meeting went, because initially there was some concern about, I had suggested, as we were all talking about it, that we assign our favorite number 5, and then 4 and 3 and 2 and 1. And after discussion, which you participated in, you said, well, I think it would be better if we use number 1 as our most important. There's no reason to have assigned 1, 2, 3, or 5 to anything unless you're going to assign a numerical value and use it for tabulation purposes. So there, it was quite an extended conversation before we did decide to do it that way. But certainly the ranking, I think, was at that point in time certainly understood that you were going to assign a greater weight to your favorite or most important candidate, and you would number it that way, and that they would be taken into consideration that way from a tabulation purposes. But that being said, I agree with you, Councilwoman Sutherland. I believe everything was done in good faith.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably that if there was anything that really should be done better, and we attempted to do it and it didn't get done, was to assign a chair that would provide the oversight.
Yep.
And be a part of the tabulation process, which that did not happen. We talked about it in the first one and said we wait to the second, and then we went to do it in the second time, and staff dissuaded us from actually doing a chair or co-chairs, which was the conversation. So it's a lesson learned, but it was also a part of the process where I think you'll understand that in no time, when there's a group of people that are voting, should anybody have 7 and others have less, you all only get 1 vote every time you sit up here and the question is called. So any expectation that the numbers should have been submitted differently from the members of the committee, I think is misplaced. So I had to put that out because I think there's power in knowing the truth. And this is what happened, and knowledge keeps you from missteps in the future. So thank you.
Mr. Macklin, do you think it would be inappropriate to have a re-vote?
I do. For the reasons that the cat's already out the bag. Everybody has access to the public record that's out there now, so that if they feel, oh, well, if we're going to rank them now, this is the person that I really wanted, so I need to make sure that I amend or adjust, or, so I think what you have is what you have at this point. And as you and I had discussed in private, sir, my main reason for bringing this up is because the people who have applied for this position of city manager, we have to make the assumption that they're intelligent individuals. And if they get the public record and they look at it the same way that I have, they will come to the same conclusion that I did, that there's no reason that citizen A should have voted 7 times and citizen B would have voted 5 times and another person would have voted twice. and that there not be some questions about the results. You know, so this gives you the ability to take a look at it, to either modify it, amend the recommendation, or completely dismiss it and say we're going to take it for what it was, and we're going to do, as what I've heard has already been said, we're going to do what we feel we need to do anyway. But I think you need to make a statement to that effect if that's what you're going to do, because the process didn't bear itself out properly. Just forget the ranking, just by the number of votes that different individuals submitted and are all counted, as opposed to others. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else further from the council? Seeing none. Moving on to item number 6, we have appointment of volunteer to police pension board. David Cloud has applied to fill the vacancy on the police pension board.
Is he the city's appointee?
He will be,
me?
yes.
He would
Okay.
be, yes. I believe he's a fine candidate.
I do too.
I would
Me
have
too.
no problems with him filling that position. He is here if we have any questions for him. Otherwise, I'll be looking for a motion.
I make a motion, we approve David Cloud to fill the vacancy on the police pension board.
I'll second that motion.
And I'd just like to make one comment at the fact that David Cloud, I believe, was a certified public pension fund person when he was with the fire department, so he's already been through the classes and the experience for several years, so it'd be hard to find somebody a better choice than David this time.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further questions? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray?
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland?
Yes.
Councilmember Bernard?
Yes,
Deputy Mayor Spurlock?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Cloud. Item number 7, we have Jonathan Davis requesting lien reduction.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, city lawyer, and staff. Michael Kyber on behalf of Phoenix Rising Unlimited. Mr. Davis is here this evening. We're here concerning a requested reduction in a code enforcement lien at the former bowling alley. By way of background, because my client believed to be mutually beneficial, they voluntarily annexed in Avon Park around 17. Thereafter, Hurricane Irma resulted in a complete loss of the bowling alley. It's been an inactive site since that time. Following Irma, the city did approach my client concerning the hazards of the building as it was and requested that he erect some fencing. He quickly spent $6,000 or $7,000 to secure the site. But again, it's been idle since that time. A notice was issued in, I believe, June of this year. The notice was directed, we're not contesting receiving notice, but it was directed to a home occupied by his mother. And apparently she had inadvertently overlooked that notice. It wasn't until we had a real estate contract for a portion of the property that was ultimately sold to Mr. Franklin, that Kubota dealership, that we recognized the lien in our title search examination. And Mr. Davis quickly moved to remedy that lien. He cleared the violations that were reported for the southern portion of, or rather the northern portion of the project. And when code enforcement came out to inspect, they cleared that violation, but then they recognized another violation on the south end. And so he was having to quickly, again, within a week, I believe he remedied that. It was totally clear in January 10th. And we are now soliciting a reduction. The site has not been in use. I don't know that the city has received complaints. When asked to do anything for the city, this client has quickly moved to do that. Simply there was some oversight on seeing the original violation. The city has not expended any real dollars in dealing with this violation. We have postage and naturally the officers that went to do the investigation, the noticing and whatnot. But the daily fine since June has accrued to over $26,000. And naturally, this was a devastating loss for my client. They're trying to aggressively do something with the parcel. Like I said, we got some into Mr. Franklin's hands and they've already expanded their operation. And we're aggressively seeking either new development there, or seeking a buyer for that would later develop it. So we're asking that you reduce the fine to an amount that the city's actually expended, such that my client can move forward with his plans.
Okay.
And
So
Oh, go ahead.
the violations have been remedied satisfactorily?
Yes.
Okay. So we see here what the actual hard costs are, and this amount of $55.44 was provided by the city, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any other questions for?
I
Dean
just have
Fryden?
a historical reference. We had a non-compliant property about 5 or 6 years ago, and we ended up charging them 2.5% of the lien in addition to the city's costs when that property tried to sell. We don't have any set steadfast rules, I don't believe, on how to approach this. It seems like we hit and miss every time. And I don't know that 2.5% plus administrative costs is the standard that the city has. It's kind of what I've thought it to be for a long time. But we have settled that 2.5, at least on, I believe, 2 occasions.
2%.
2%? Well, it used to be 2.5 at one point, so maybe 2%. But I don't know that was ever enacted as an ordinance or as a resolution or anything. And if not, then it's really up to us each time to make these changes. Code enforcement has been a big deal, at least for me, and I know for Mr. Spurlock in the last several months. And I think everyone has a circumstance that, shows a trail of happenings, and it seems as though every time you get cited for something, you remedy the issue right away. So it's not like you're a derelict property owner that just lets it go for 5 or 6 years like the previous ones that we had that we did fine. So I'm okay with the lien reduction for this particular case. And in the meantime, I would hope that the city attorney devise something that we can stick and sink our teeth into in the future. But, right now, there's no violation, is what you're saying? You've
Yes,
remedied all of the issues at hand?
That's correct.
And I do know that you did put a fence around it for safety issues and whatnot. So I haven't noticed it when I've driven by lately, but what is the status of the property right now in terms of its appearance? Is there anything that you have any other code enforcement issues with?
No, again, there was an enforcement issue on a parking lot that's not been in use since Irma hit us. And when they looked at that, there were some landscaping issues that needed to be addressed on the southern portion. But otherwise, no. And again, we're aggressively trying to get somebody in there that will make good use of that frontage. I mean, it's a wonderful parcel.
So you're looking to sell it at this point? I'm trying to get into your private business, but, it is part of the city.
There is a go-kart track, of course,
Uh-huh.
adjacent to that, further in, that is in good shape. So it's either figure out a means to utilize the go-kart track while still having something on the frontage, or perhaps the neighbor to our north wants to expand even further. We're not sure yet, but no, we don't intend this parcel to be idle for any longer than it should be. I mean, we're in a good market, interest is great, economy's great. There's no reason that we should not be able to get something together on this project in the near term. But no, there's no now existing violations on the project.
So how long did the first notice go out before he found out it was in existence?
Well, it went out in June, but I didn't recognize the violation until I believe late November or December when I did my title search, because again, we sold a portion of the parcel to the Kubota dealership to the north. So
See-
by the time you heard about it, it was literally several weeks. I mean, we ran into Christmas and New Year's Eve. We have a closing pending, so we're not doing this. It was just logistics.
But he
of getting
spoke
it.
with did he speak with a code enforcement officer?
No.
Well, how did he
Notice
know-
happened in June.
Wait, you said that we had one violation and then he came out to clear that one,
Yes.
only to notice that there was another. So somebody talked to somebody at one given time or another.
Yes, sir. John saw the north violation, and when they came to clear it, to confirm that it had been remedied, they.
You mean city staff, when they
Yes,
of
they
looked at?
another portion of the property and said, well, that's an issue too.
So he knew that then, at that time.
He probably didn't tell
No.
him, he probably noted it himself, that's what I'm
Right.
thinking.
No, the initial violation did not concern the southern portion of the property at all. So he was given an area to deal with, he dealt with it, but when they came to investigate that, they said, oh, John, you've got another issue over there, and
Oh, he
quickly moved
did.
to get that solved too.
That was by face-to-face conversation or by sending out a nothing?
Yeah, I was working with Ashley in the office here.
Okay,
Actually sent out an investigator, I don't remember his name, but when they came out, they said, yeah, okay, you cleared this one, but you got another violation here. I said, okay.
May
no
I
problem."
ask
said,
what
"Just
the-
give me a week to get it cleared, and I did, I got it cleared within a week.
What was the
Now,
other violation? What was the secondary one?
Overgrown.
Yes.
Grass.
weed eating.
Okay, so the first one,
The first one concerned a parking lot that had potholes in it.
Mm-hmm.
That was not
Not being
used
used.
for the public at all.
and it's been fenced in.
Yes, well, it was demoed since the fencing, but the
Yeah.
fencing on it was still erect and a hazard for they tore it all down.
The reason that I recommended against a lien reduction was because code enforcement sends notices out and gives you so much time to come into compliance. And if you don't come into compliance, then you're asked to appear before the magistrate. If you show up, the magistrate will talk to you. If you don't, then, either way, you could probably get fined. So when you're looking at fines of $150 a day, these did not start until, and you said you didn't address it until November, but that's my thoughts, is because everybody gets the opportunity to bring their property into compliance before the fines ever start. And that's my
Well,
concern.
I would also point out that not only they get a warning at the point when they come out and see the violation for the first time, but then they're told that you still didn't fix it, even though I gave you a sufficient time to get it fixed. So now you have to go to the special magistrate. They go before the special magistrate. The special magistrate can't immediately give fines. The special magistrate still has to give another additional sufficient time to get it remedied before the penalties start taking place. And then it's ratified. If it's still not fixed at that point, within that period of time, those fines are ratified. So there is so much, backup to this. I think I've mentioned to you all before my disagreement with reduction of liens on the basis of the fact that, you do come in and hammer code enforcement for not doing their job, but then come back and then people that run up tens of thousands of dollars worth of fines by ignoring the code enforcement area. You say, well, that's okay, $50 is fine with us instead of 26,000. Now I just simply say that's the problem.
And,
I agree.
and I think what we did the last time this came about, and you brought that up the last time, is that's why we decided to do the 2%, not only just for our hard costs, but for our manpower and everything else that we sent out there as well. So we did do a 2% on everyone that I could remember.
Is that
Just-
2% over the hard costs? Is that
No,
what that is?
2% of the lien itself.
Yeah,
Oh.
2% of the
Plus-
liens.
plus the hard
Plus the
costs.
hard
Yeah.
costs. That's
Plus
what
the
we've
So
hard
been
just
doing.
just so the council knows, that figure would be $584.54. That would be 2% of the 26,000 plus the hard cost of
It's
$55.
500 and what?
$584.54.
But I still have a problem. It's not clear to me if you had the first violation and then when you call for an inspection to clear that violation, they told you at that time you had a second violation, and there's no communication between the second time and this occurred on the second time, and all this is
I don't know,
accrued.
the lien never stemmed from the second claim.
Well, where did it stem from? The first time?
No,
All the times?
Again, there was a violation.
Correct.
decided on the north part of the property.
Correct.
And nothing else. I mean, presumably, if we had agents out there reviewing the property, they would have brought to light, nothing great changed on the property between that 3 or 4 weeks. So all he was aware of that the city required to remedy was the north portion. When they came out to confirm that he did the work that he needed to do, they said, oh, wait, there's more. And within a week of that, that part was done. I'm not even sure there's a lien. I don't believe there is a lien. It's just, it was another, we couldn't clear it all up and get before this council to seek a reduction because we got hit with yet another, you need to fix that.
There's a
And-
lien.
And he
There
gets
is one.
statements, he gets several notices that this is going on, several notices. And
Again,
all of those
we're not-
notices went to the mother-in-law or the mother's house.
We're not.
The courtesy letters were sent out in 2018.
we're not contesting constructive notice of the violation. What I'm suggesting is the notice went to his mother's house, and she did not bring that to light to John, who is responsible for taking care of this. It's not a matter of being indignant and not wanting to fix the problem. Again, on the heels of Irma, hey, we needed to spend $6,000 or $7,000 to make this a safe site. And then when I discovered it in the title search, when we have a contract on it, he quickly moved to remedy that.
Yeah.
You know, my thought is that since we've done this before, and what we did was the hard cost plus the 2% of the, what is it called?
The release of the
Lien.
lien.
The lien itself. I think, and we don't have any guidelines right now what we're going to do. I think to be fair to this gentleman as well as we do continue with the same process that we've been doing in the past, that we've done in the past, until we can come up with some guidelines.
I agree, and I would make,
agree too.
I would make a motion that we reduce the fine to an amount of $584.54.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any
Wait a
further?
minute. It's the lien, but to include, or just
2%.
to include the 2%,
That is
just
the 2%
Yeah, I got you.
plus the hard cost of
costs.
$55.44.
Okay.
I would just simply say that adding 2% is just still, you know,
A joke.
it's not gonna cause enforcement to increase in the city, and especially when the news is gonna say, you know, all due respect, that the city forgave another code enforcement lien. And so, you know, that's basically an invitation for you to just ignore
And come up
code
with
enforcement, not go to the code enforcement special magistrate hearing, ignore that as well. Then ignore the order afterwards, and then when you get ready to sell the property, well, then you can come in and say, hey, you know, how about giving us the break here? We feel like we were wronged. It's just
Well, I mean,
ridiculous.
the goal-
And
the-
then go back then and then hammer your code enforcement.
The
people
goal
for
is to
this.
bring the
Compliance.
properties into compliance, not to fine people.
No, I agree with that. That is the goal. But you know, how are you gonna achieve that goal when you're telling everybody, don't worry about it, we're not gonna fine you?
We
Well,
did achieve the
then
goal.
perhaps in the future, when we revise this, the way we do things, that we increase the percentage to 50% or 25% or
Hell,
something
make
like
it
that.
100.
Well, 2% was just thrown out there
Yeah.
from the last, so could
Right.
we come up with a rule or
We
or
should.
something? I said
Yeah.
until we can come up, I just don't think it would be fair to this gentleman to change the
Yeah.
way we've been operating in the past until we come up with some actual guidelines for us to follow.
I agree.
Yeah, I think
That's what I'm saying.
if we had something in writing, then when they
Yes.
mailed out the warning of it, they should include that proclamation that we're gonna come up and say, if you don't take care of this in a timely manner, then you go to magistrate. If you don't take care of it, then here's what's gonna happen, and this is what the minimum you're gonna have to pay, whether it's a percentage or a dollar amount. We need to
Or the
feed that
actual
to the
lien
person,
itself.
the
Yeah,
client at
I'm-
the same time.
Well, you can take anything from the top of the fine down to nothing, and your, you know, good faith discretion. But I would recommend against setting a standard as to, well, we'll allow, if we do forgive these, we go to 2%. Because that's like saying, you know,
I
shoot for the
understand.
2%,
You're right.
you know, that,
Yeah.
and you've done it before, do it again. I would just simply say, if the circumstances justify it, you know, somebody's in the hospital, you know, somebody is, or you have a situation like in 2008 where, you know, the market crashed and, you know, people were going bankrupt, and so getting their properties fixed was kind of ridiculous. A lot of cities were forgiving liens at that point. But to just simply do it on the basis of, you know, we didn't know, we're sorry.
Yeah,
It's
I-
just kind of, you know, forget about enforcement, you're not gonna have any.
I agree.
Until then.
And I think the last residential one we had, all we did was charge them hard cost and gave them a long time to pay for it.
I think we need to make a motion tonight after we finish this case to say if somebody comes in and unless it's something like that, we're gonna charge whatever it is.
Well, they're in this situation
just
because
keeps-
of the hurricane.
It just keeps killing the code.
They're in this situation because of the hurricane.
I understand.
Let me
I
ask you one
understand.
question. Do
I
you
understand.
recall what the lien was for? Was it for the overgrowth or was it for something else? For the
Yeah.
potholes, which,
Unsafe, yeah.
right, okay.
I hate to characterize it as my client ignoring it. I'd like there to be, if you could empathize with the property owner that suffered a complete loss, that has been out of business for 2 years,
Yeah.
and he's got a site that no one's driving on, that there's not a hazard, aesthetically perhaps. If he was ignoring it, he wouldn't have built the $6,000 or $7,000 fence immediately after to protect the site. So, and we acknowledge that there was a notice that was properly given, there was overlooked. I'm not saying that it was ignored, I'm not saying we're indignant in not remedying it. It's just one of those circumstances, got a site, they're on their heels from Irma. When the actual knowledge of it, once I got my title report, it was bang, 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 got it done.
Well, I'm not speaking with regard to this particular person in general. I'm,
Yeah, I
s-
gotcha.
every time this has come up, as you will recall,
Yeah.
I've railed the same
You're
way
right.
about
I grew up
it.
in Highlands County, I understand the importance of code enforcement, what it does for our community, but I think in this circumstance, I'd ask that the council do give some consideration.
Agreed. Well, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further questions?
I have just one question again. In regards to how the hard costs are allocated, why isn't staff
Yeah.
time part of the hard costs?
It should be, in my opinion, too, but I guess that's not the way it's been being done.
Isn't there a statute on what you can charge, Jerry? And I think
For-
staff
For
time was,
administrative fees, yes. Well, it's actually case law, because it does, in the statute, it talks about, you can pay for your administrative, charge for administrative expenses, but the statute says you can't charge for attorney's fees and for certain administrative staff and so on. But we're not necessarily doing that here. We're just simply saying, you got a $26,000 fine for daily fines. We're gonna lower it down and recover our cost for those things instead of charging you $26,000.
Okay.
Which if they have a problem with, we'll just reinstitute the $26,000. But, that's where we're at.
Yeah,
Look, our goal is not for the city to go backwards as a byproduct of this issue. I was surprised when I saw the accounting for the payoff, that it was not inclusive of the investigatory time and all that. So we're certainly receptive. We're not here to make the city go backwards on its expenses concerning this violation.
I just have one other question. Obviously, we mail out a notice that there is a problem and there's a possibility of a fine if we don't fix a problem. And when that was ignored through whatever issue it was, don't we send out a second notice to ask them to come to the magistrate? So whatever happened to that notice?
I cannot speak to that.
Okay, all right, that's.
Well, listen, I'll just be frank, and the mail went to my mom's house. We had prior issues and prior dealings with you guys regarding the fence. So we had paperwork, so when that paperwork came in, I think the assumption was made that it was already handled, because I already handled the fence issue, worked with code enforcement, so. We didn't intentionally, open it, I'm gonna ignore these guys. We thought that it was handled, that it was a prior fence issue, and that we were okay. I was rather surprised when we went to close, that we saw that it had been an issue for this,
Okay.
that long.
All right,
Okay,
We worked very as quick as possible, just like we did prior to.
okay.
very good.
I'm
Well, we
ready
have
to
a
vote.
motion and a second. Anything further?
Nope.
Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray?
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland?
Yes.
Councilmember Bernard?
Yes,
Deputy Mayor Spurlock?
No.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes,
Motion passed 4-1.
thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
Is there a time constraint on when that payment has to be made?
We didn't put it in, but we did it on the last one.
Do you have any idea when that payment might be made?
There-
Payment within 7 days.
There's a lien on the property, so until it's made, the
Maybe
lien
send
will
them
be
out,
there.
return signature.
Okay, you have an answer of 7 days?
that's a good
Okay.
idea.
And
Thank you.
please acknowledge that this is for the reduction of the agreement for the reduction of the penalty.
Yes, sir.
It's lien.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good week.
Y'all could put a skating ring there, that would be good. I don't know how to skate, but hey, I would learn. Yeah.
If we sent those out return signatures, it'd be a little bit more,
They do.
we'd know who got
They
who
do.
got it, you know
They
what I'm
do.
saying?
They send them certified.
All right.
return receipt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Item number 8, we have City Hall third floor window bids.
Yes. Due to the fact that we got 3 quotes for the third floor windows, and the quote that was chosen was $30,000 for hurricane windows. We did not go by the procurement process, and I talked to the city attorney about it, and I don't know if it's a situation where we need to go out to bid now. I know the numbers are out there, or if it's a situation, I believe that the business owner has ordered the windows, so I'm not sure what we need to do to correct this problem, or if we
Can
can
we
move forward, or.
Can we retroactively approve the waiver of the procurement process?
Yeah, well, it's ratification of their own prior decision, and, but, what, is it irreversible at this point? Is it, I mean, I think we just have to find out from them if it's irreversible. If they're already ordered and can't be stopped. But,
Well, you know what, I want to make a comment on this. The bids that came in were originally for regular windows, and it had an additional amount in there for hurricane windows as a, what's it called when you have a secondary thing to a bid?
Option, or an addendum?
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. You know, you have the list and then you add this over here.
An upgrade.
An upgrade, yeah. So she was within her procurement policy if it was below 25,000, which I don't know what the third one, which had a 56 or something like
Yeah.
that $1,000 amount, what theirs would have been without the hurricane, but it was flawed from the get-go, you know, because it didn't say this and that. It just, they arbitrarily put their number in there. I called the Winter Haven people and they wouldn't give a hurricane price.
possibly
And that was
flawed.
before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
possibly flawed.
Yeah,
But
but
I'll just
if-
simply say that, you know, generally these things are done based on a good faith estimate of what
Yeah.
it's gonna come out. Because, I mean, you don't just immediately assume that it's gonna be
And that's,
the no bid limit, over the no bid limit.
right.
And I think that they said that they were kind of shocked that the hurricane windows were so much more than the standard windows. And so, but once the cat's out of the bag, I think at that point,
It's the-
somebody should have said, well, wait a minute, you know, if they decide they want the hurricane windows, then we have to go to a bid. And that should have been, you know, they should have gone back out and gone to bid at that point, or asked for it to go to bid. Because once you let the cat out of the bag with regard to prices, it's gonna be difficult for those people to then honor it, because anybody could undercut them by, you know, $100 and, you know,
Yeah.
and what are you gonna say at that point? If you're gonna accept a low bid and all other things are equal, then you have to accept the low bid. So,
And that was my point, that when the bids went out, it went out for specifically regular windows. The hurricane windows were an addition. If we had just stuck to the regular window, then it would have been under the 25,000, which they did have the bids. I don't know if they were sealed in an envelope like they should have been.
well,
I don't think so.
So that part right there was wrong, but if we're gonna have to go back and retroactively approve it, then I would go ahead and make the motion for that, because at this point, it's too late.
I agree.
So I would like to make a motion to retroactively approve that bid process, even though, how do I do that? To bypass the procurement policy and allow for that bid to be awarded.
And I would suggest that you make an amendment to your policy, which you're allowed to do, and your policy, to provide for some kind of a procedure that will keep this from happening in the future.
It's called paying attention to the procurement policy. It's not
Yeah.
up to us to change it every, this is not
But
the
once you
first time
open
we've
those-
done this.
But if you're doing call-ins, once you open those envelope them, I would suggest that the call-ins, you know, you do a call-in and you find out, well, if somebody says that it's it's gonna be this amount and that's over your no bid limit, that you stop it right
Right.
then and don't write it down, because if you write it down, then it's a public record that anybody can ask for. And you go back out and you say, I'm sorry, but I think this is gonna be over our no bid limit, we need to bid. So you get the approval to bid and off you go.
And we, yeah.
Couldn't you simply also say that any bid above that, whatever number that is, 30,000, whatever it is going to be
25.
rejected unless there's a formal bid process? So that way, the staff member, whoever was asked for the
But
bids,
once they
didn't
come
actually
in
accept
and
them.
talk to you about it, and they've written down all the information, and it's in your packet, it's a public record.
No, yeah, I'm talking about the staff member that was charged with going and finding these bids. If we have it in our policy that we're not gonna accept that bid, period, then we never accept it. Therefore, it's never part of a public record because we never accepted it.
Right.
And then that we avoid all this altogether. It's never gonna be a public record, and then we can immediately go to the bid process because they now know it's gonna be more than that, and
I just
everybody
think-
wins, right?
I think the consideration should be there anyway. I did put together, by the way, a bench sheet for you guys to have with information on it. I'm gonna have it plasticized and give it to you. And that will have the no bid limits on it so that, you know, we can catch that stuff at the meetings.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ideally, we catch it before the meetings. That's,
Well, that would be the best place to
Yeah.
catch it. When you see something's over 25, yeah, it should ring bells. But once they've written it down, technically, somebody can request it, you know, I mean, I don't know how often that happens, but, you know, the cat's out of the bag if somebody does.
yeah. Okay.
There is a process when you do sealed bids, to keep things secret.
Well, yeah, it's 30 days advertised, it's a sealed bid, you open them all up at the same time. It's the same thing when you do a verbal, if it's under the, 1,000, anything above 1,000 still has to be done with a sealed envelope, and you open it at the same time, you just don't advertise it. It's, I believe, is it the 1,000 or the 10,000 mark? I have it in here somewhere. But anyway, we have 3 different levels. One, you can just pick up the phone and call and have someone come and do it if it's less than $500, and then it just goes by scale. It requires staff knowledge of the procurement policy to do that, so
Well, I think
this does go back on that person that made that phone call. End of story. So here we're cleaning it up, and you have angry people out there in the community right now that pointed this out, and we're having to fix it. So it's you know, I don't like being in this position of having to clean up a mess.
Well,
So-
if we discover, I mean, I would hold off till we find out whether it's been reversible. And if it can be reversed, it should be reversed.
But Jerry, that's still too late. The numbers are out of the bag, and there's already a motion on the table with a second, I believe. Did
Who
someone
seconded
second
it?
it?
Who's second?
Who seconded my motion? Did anyone second it? I guess not.
I didn't recall a second. I didn't know you actually made a motion.
I made a motion to retroactively bypass the procurement policy to allow the bid that was submitted as awarded.
Is there a second for that motion?
I second it.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
You need to explain.
Councilmember
Hold,
Gray?
hold,
Wait,
hold,
wait,
hold,
wait.
hold. You need to explain your conflict before you just call a conflict.
I will be abstaining from this vote as the contractor involved is a family member.
Councilmember Gray?
Wait, before we move on, let me just ask a question. So what you're saying is that we're gonna bypass the procurement process and accept the bid that was put in?
Correct.
Well,
Okay.
I think you have already bypassed the
Yes,
process.
yeah, but
Yeah.
we're just agreeing to do it
Yeah.
now.
Right.
Okay, yes.
He's got one.
You already got one?
He
Go ahead,
has
call it
submitted.
now, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, I already have a pen. I go.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Councilmember Gray?
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland?
Yes.
Councilmember Bernard?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Spurlock?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
As I said before, I'm abstaining because the contractor involved is a family member.
Okay, and motion passed. 4 in favor, 1 abstention.
Okay. I'll finish that later. Okay,
I'm gonna go on record that I'm never doing this again.
agreed. All right.
Promise?
And I'm gonna try and, if you have any other information you'd like to see on this summary sheet that I'm gonna send you, let me know, and I will add it to it. But it's just really a summary of some of these things like your no bid limits and,
Okay.
selection of engineers and things like that. They should have couple charter provisions that we deal with all the time, and so on.
Yeah, add it to it, please.
Okay. All right, item number 9, we have the Police Pension Board. Councilman Bernard.
I attended the most recent Avon Park Police Pension Board last week. There were some very interesting things that were brought to my attention at the meeting, and I think that all of us should be aware of them. The first thing is that the fund is still over 90% funded. At one time, it was over 100% funded, but it's gone down since there are no active members putting money into the fund. But anything over 90%, it's approximately 92%, is about 98% better than most pension funds in the state. So financially, they're still in great shape. Another thing is the state has come out with a training process starting effective next year, 2021, that everybody who serves on the pension boards will have to have a minimum of 5 hours training, and that's proposed to do that. It's not final, but I'm pretty sure that's going to be done because there are members on certain pension boards that they're not required to go to school. I personally think that they should, but there have been some past members on pension boards that had never been to a school, and I think it'd be, I'm glad that they're making a requirement of a minimum of 5 hours. I actually think it
Is
should be
that
more.
per year, Councilman?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that should be started in 2021, so that's all good news. The other thing is that basically up until this year, the amount of money that went into the fund for the police pension fund, that the state hasn't been required to put any money in. And so that's been a great thing because it was over 100% funded. So it hadn't cost the city any money. But that being said, that the city still got the state money because there were still working officers. And basically what was voted on at that time is all the money that went to the city that wasn't going to be used for the pension went back to the pension fund. And so that was good for the pension fund, but it stopped as of last year, the agreement between the city and the police pension. So that agreement is no longer in force. With that being said, there is $49,000 sitting there in reserves that basically came to the city to use for the pension fund that didn't need to be used. So it hasn't been allocated to go back to the pension fund, and I suggest that we go ahead and make a motion that we go ahead and take that $49,000 just sitting there and give it back to the city because we have no obligation or contract to give it to the pension fund. And one of the reasons why I would suggest that is because of the fact that there are no employees on the police department, period, and there's no money going in, that we're basically considered retire-only plan, that the fact that there's no money going in, we're going to have to start paying money to the pension fund probably this year, and it's probably going to be more than $50,000 or $60,000. And that is probably going to increase as time goes on, as long as there's no active members, because money is still going to continue to be paid out without no other income coming in except for the investment. And basically, the retiree plan, we have, actually they're kind of young members that are left, and so the life expectancy of this plan with the money that's in there now continuing, it could go on for plus more than 30 years. So for more than 30 years, we are going to be paying, more than $50 or $60, 50 or 60,000 into the police pension fund because we have no police officers putting money into the fund, no active members. So
But when they retire, I thought it was off of their retirement amount, not any further contributions.
the contribution only comes from when they're working. They don't make contributions once they retire.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So once they're retired, why are we still contributing to it when the market is what dictates what their
Because the
pension's going to
state
be?
requires you to have so much money put in there, and so the state requires us, in order for us to give us money, it has to come to us, and then we have to put so much in to make it what they call it level. Now, with that being said, this is going to be the first year where the state is actually going to do an annual report that states we have no active police officers. And so this is something that's possible that they could look at and say, well, if there's no active police officers, then we can go ahead and close that plan. And if we close that plan, you know, that could cost us money. So I just want to give you forewarning that it may be advantageous, instead of us paying all this money, that if we were to hire, say, possibly one person that was experienced to do some type of duties as a police officer. I mean, there's all kinds of things that they could actually really do, as well as other things, depending on the person that we would hire. Could be trained to do other things within the city at a cost that may be less than what that amount is.
But would he pay enough into that fund to make it solvent?
No, but it would keep the state from closing that fund.
Until, you're saying for 30 years?
Yes.
And then that person would be on for 30 years if it ends
Yeah.
up being
Yeah.
that they're young. So this isn't a perpetuity, we're gonna be paying
Actually,
something.
because it goes to survivors, which includes kids, it could go on as much as 85 years. So, but of course, you also have to realize this is by the actuary. You know, those numbers change every year, including, you know, this is going through life expectancy. So if life expectancy in reality becomes a lot more people who don't make that age group, then there's less money going out, so then the city won't have to pay anything.
Is
But-
there a possibility that any of the retirees change the name of their beneficiary to extend those payments and make it more burdensome on the city?
That's what he said.
Yeah.
Once it's
And
on
I
there
didn't-
now,
if that's the case,
no.
there's-
Once it's on there now, it's automatically their spouse, and
Okay.
if they get divorced or their spouse dies, then they can change it.
Okay.
So especially if somebody is no longer married, and they remarried, most cases, you think that they would change that beneficiary. In the past, that has not happened, and basically, some ex-partners or wives have gotten the money, which has not been happy, because then the other person is taking care of the children too. So that's something that's always been forewarned by the pension fund, telling people that they're in a retirement plan to keep up to date on your beneficiaries, because otherwise, if you have a beneficiary who passed away before you, and then you pass away, then that money just goes back to the fund and nobody gets it. So, but it's just something I wanted to bring to your attention that we need to consider, and I will follow this continually, as well as going to the schools and bringing it up with some of the attorneys. And I think Jerry and I probably know what's gonna happen eventually, because the state doesn't work normally really fast on this. So I think we have some time, but I think it's something to look into, and especially if I think there's somebody that would be a great addition to the city with many years' experience that would be helpful to keep this plan from being closed, as well as benefit the city for whatever we have to pay them. I will keep you informed of that also.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would be interested to know what the likelihood of that happening is, for one.
Oh, what, the one person?
What the likelihood of the plan being closed is.
I think, well, you never know what the state's gonna do, and that's pretty much what they tell you. And the state is usually very slow, and I think the last time we had a conversation with a lawyer, with the state, that it could take 3 years, it could take 5 years, it could take 1 year.
Yeah.
You really don't know what they're gonna do, but they do the annual report, and if all of a sudden they see there are no active members, you don't know what the state's gonna do, right, Jerry?
Yes.
So-
Can it
so-
be reopened after it's been closed if we were to hire somebody after the fact?
I think after you close it, it's closed for good.
And I know, at least one of my other cities uses their police department to do code enforcement, the citations
Yeah.
format,
Right.
and so on. And so I think if you did do somebody like that, you could put,
Yeah.
potentially also have them not just public safety, but also
Yeah.
oversee that and, make sure that that's being handled
Yeah.
properly and issue citations, which, it's a little bit
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
strict than the code enforcement, special magistrate type, which we just talked about how this that is. The citations are like instantaneous fines, and, so,
But a police officer would have to have standards and have a gun and the weapon and the whole training and
Yeah.
all of that. And it's just not gonna be some,
No.
semi-retired cop,
No.
right?
And
It would
I-
have to be fully fledged, sworn in.
Absolutely, and that's why I would look at somebody who's previously been on our police force or another police force. Do have people in mind, just so you know. And I think that,
But it's not up to us. It's up to the city manager.
Yeah.
that's true.
And then again, what you're really talking about is opening up another police department.
Well, it's one of one.
No, it's
But
not really.
I believe we could get somebody at less than, maybe half the cost as
Can they be
previous-
part-time?
Do what?
Can they be part-time, or does it have to be full-time?
It's up to the state to make that decision. We'd have to look into that, because that's
I don't know the answer to that.
lawyers, I mean, you don't know what the state's gonna do. It's really kinda weird, but I do think that, times when we have events, it'd be nice if we had somebody there, because, or instead of having worried about whether the sheriff shows up or not, or even when they have people blocking off the streets, it'd be nice to have somebody who was properly trained to do that, instead of somebody that was just a city employee. And the idea is that this keeps us from not having to pay the money. It'd be worth it to pay somebody, say 50,000.
For the
than us
next
to put-
85 years. So let me
Well,
ask you, what is the big payout? I mean, you talk about, spending all the money. What is that? Is it paying off the entire pension for everyone? We'd have to get
If it's closed and then terminated, the last amounts that I've heard, which was probably 3 or 4 years ago, was somewhere between 11 and $12 million.
I thought it was up to us if we wanted to close it
It is.
or terminate it.
It is.
It is, that's
It
what you're
is.
saying.
But the
So-
result of you
or the
doing that
state
is
could.
not up to you.
Okay.
Yeah,
But-
the state can do anything they want. But
Okay.
yes, the pension people cannot close it or terminate it. The members of the pension board cannot make that decision. Only the city council can.
Can we can prevent the state from terminating our plan?
Yes.
Because we only have to make the big payout if the plan is terminated, not
Yes.
closed.
But if it's
That's
closed,
right.
then they might turn around and terminate it. If there's no active members, it's like,
That's what we were told.
they might say,
So
you
they
don't
have the option to terminate it.
Yeah.
And some people might have the inclination to push the state to do that.
Oh, they
So
absolutely
that they get their
would.
payout. Yes, I've heard this
Yeah,
before.
there's several that would do that,
Yes.
that thought about doing it already. So I'm just saying, it's something to think about, that I'd rather pay somebody to actually do the job than sit there and have us pay the money and not get anything back for it.
I mean, I guess,
But that's open for another
who,
day's discussion.
who do we ask to guarantee us of what, the future payouts are gonna be?
Well, that's up to the actuary, and that's gonna change every single year, and it could change tremendously one way or the other. But basically, what he told me is that, you're probably going to do more than $60,000 a year.
How high can that go? Did he have any idea?
It could go up to 100,000 plus.
So at some point, we're gonna be saying, or some other council's gonna say, what were we thinking when we allowed 60 to 100, that could go up even higher? Take a long-term loan,
Well, I guess-
bond issue, perhaps? I don't know.
Don't
Yeah.
know what you pay it on, because it doesn't produce income.
No, but I mean, it would be, I don't know.
It wouldn't be a
So-
revenue bond, it would have to be a general obligation bond, in which case you'd have to submit that for a vote. You think people would vote for it?
So you're saying that even if we do hire someone, we would pay their salary, of course, and we'd still have to pay some
No,
of
then we
the-
would get we'd probably continue to get the state money, but we would still have to put more than that in, because it doesn't match, what it was before. The other thing is that the pension funds, what they're doing is they're lowering their interest rate of return that they're expecting. A few years ago, most funds were expecting like close to 8%, some even 9 or 10%.
Right.
Which is basically unrealistic, but most of them have kept it right about 8%. But in the last 2 or 3 years, they've started decreasing down to the 7.5%. Some gone to 7, some have gone to lower that. I also believe that the FRC was stated that they are actually planning to go down to 6% on their retirement rate of return also. So this is just something, it's one of those things when the state keeps putting out money, eventually they go, wait a minute, let's do something about it. And then if the pension, we have no control over what they decide their rate of return is, but if they try to lower it one more time, I tell you, I will speak loud and clear so they know exactly how I feel representing the city. I think it's unrealistic for them to expect it to go below 7%, the rate of return. The rate of returns the last several years have been above and beyond what their rate of return was. So the last several years, the fund has done fantastic. Of course, you can't expect that to go on forever,
Yeah.
but from what I've
For
seen.
4 more years it might.
Yes,
I'm just putting that out there.
okay. But I think that, I think they're doing a great job. I mean, I've sit in both pension and the police, and, you know, the active managers that they have done a great job. They turn around and they evaluate all the different mutual fund managers that they have, and they move money to and from them as things go along. So they understand the market, so sometimes they'll put more money in bonds than they do in the stocks or 500 index or so on and so forth. Of course, they all have limits on what they have to have minimum amount of investment. They have to have so much in bonds, so much in stock, and
Yeah.
they're allowed maybe up to 5% or 2% in real estate and other things like that, and that can all change. But what I've seen is they continue to make changes to where they continue to get more than 7.5%, or at least close to 7.5%. So they're all doing a great job here in Avon Park. I think their management people are doing fantastic. And I wish I made that rate of return year after year. But I think that, I just want to get everybody on notice to when, we got time.
So let me, in terms of the actuary, you know, they're the ones that do the projections based off the numbers that they have, and
Yeah.
it's who pays for that? They pay for that when
Yes,
they do
they
those
pay for
studies?
that. They pay for
So
that.
they're not willing to give us about a 5-year projection of this? I mean, can the board request that information? Don't
They-
they get an additional money
They-
for administrative costs as well?
We did that once before. Actually, the city did that because the previous city manager wanted to know what the fees would be, because he was looking at terminating the plan. And so the city paid the actuary to do that. But when he actually made that 5-year and 10-year thing, he said it could change drastically from year to year. I mean, we have no idea, please excuse the expression, of several people in the pension plan passing away next year. Then all of a sudden that changes drastically. I mean, so that makes a major, major difference, and that's why they do an annual report, which is what he just did, the actuary just did this month for this year. But next year, they do it once a year unless they ask for it to be done more, and then they have to pay for it.
A moving target.
It's a lot to know, it's a lot to feel, but I just figure it's my duty to let everybody know exactly where we
So
stand.
Jim, you had made a motion at the beginning of your conversation.
Today?
You said that, yeah, you said that you were moving to request that the money's coming in from the state.
49,000 that's in reserves. Up until then, if the money that came to the city, if the city didn't have to put it in the pension fund, then the city had previously agreed to give that money to the pension fund. So up until this year.
The contract
Last
expired.
year, actually, they've been getting all the money that the city didn't have to pay. They got it. So the money we get from the state that helps us make the payment, they were getting it because the city didn't have to pay anything. That's not true. As of last year, that contract agreement between the city and the pension has ended. So as of right now, there's $49,000 just sitting there.
So it's ours anyway.
It's ours, but we have to make a motion to ask for it and take it, say that we want it. It's money sitting in our reserve fund, basically.
Yeah, but we definitely have to hire somebody. You can't just let it sit there and turn into some other fund. It has to be used for officer expenditures.
No,
But I mean, that's technically what you're looking for in order to keep the pension.
no, right now, the only one that has control over that 49,000 is the city.
Okay, that's what I
So,
mean. We don't
yeah.
have to do anything with it right now, other than if we hire somebody, we would use some of those funds to pay for that individual.
Absolutely.
And until we get a threatening letter from the state, will we do that? Is what
Yes,
you're,
absolutely. You're right.
So could we just let it stay right there where it is now?
Yeah, because they had no control over it. We do.
okay.
So we-
Are we sure that we're gonna get a threatening letter before they do it?
Say what, Jerry?
Are we sure that we're gonna get a threatening letter?
No.
Before they
No.
pull the trigger?
No.
I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility.
I, just from the lawyers I've talked to, and I've talked to many of them, you know, the state does things very slow, and they don't, and something with a small amount of money like this at Avon Park, it isn't like it's no big deal. And that's why theoretically, we skated for the last several years with only 2, you know, AKA police officers, public safety officers. And, you know, theoretically, the state could have done something about it even then, because they actually, in actuality, weren't doing any police work, even though it was stated that they were. But so the state's like, we don't really care about Avon Park, that's no big deal. But now when they do this annual report and there are nobody, it's like, well, if you don't have a police department or you don't have any police officers of any kind, then basically your fund actually, your pension fund is actually considered closed, so we might as well just go ahead and close it. And then we lose the money and we have and once it's closed, we can never open it back up. We'd have to start over from scratch, and you definitely wouldn't want it. What would happen if next year the sheriff department decides to double their rate? Not saying that they would, but if they started to double their rate and they asked to charge us an extra $2 million for them, the police are Avon Park, and we said, well, that's ridiculous. We need to come back with our own police department. If that plan is closed, then there's no pension fund available for us to hire people to put them into.
FRS, baby.
Yeah,
FRS, but
there
then-
you go.
Then you trying to find hire people under the FRS. You're not, it's going to be extremely difficult.
I think it's possible.
Anything's possible, but it'll be extremely difficult, because that's part of the reason why we had issues with the fire department and what they were making. People were coming here and getting trained, and they were going somewhere to make more money. That's the same thing. If they can come here and get trained and go somewhere else where they're getting a better pension fund than we're getting through the FRS, you think they're gonna stay?
Well, the sheriff has a pretty good track record of keeping their employees, and they're all on FRS.
I think they,
And the state
overall, they
is-
make a lot more money than our police department,
Yeah,
police
well,
officers make.
As it stands right now,
Overall.
I don't see us going anywhere. I
Okay.
hope the sheriff doesn't do that, but anyway.
Is there
okay.
any action to be taken right now? Was there a
No.
motion made or no?
No, I
Was
didn't
a
make the motion.
But no second.
Okay. All right, moving on to item number 10, Brickell Building financial information.
Yes, I had requested this info to be on the budget, I'm sorry, on the agenda. The CRA had met a couple of times, and there were some questions with them in regards to, are we ever going to make a commitment on whether or not we're going to forgive the CRA loan? It's at $983,000 loan. The current balance, I believe, is about $731,000, assuming that this year the CRA has already had its budget line item for Main Street. By the way, this is Main Street. It's not it's not all this year. This is just Main Street. We've been talking about it for about a year, about the loan forgiveness, and, you know, there's a lot of expenses that were used from the Main Street CRA loan as a way of bypassing using city funds. Keep in mind that the entire amount of this loan is funded, well, I wouldn't say the entire, about 97% of that loan is funded through the counties, the TIF dollars from the county. The city does not contribute to that because our taxes are so low. So this is really county money coming back to the city for the purpose of the Main Street CRA that the city has been using to revamp its infrastructure when, in my opinion, Florida Statute 163 is for the removal of slum and blight, for facade programs and other programs to effectively clean up a lot of the problems that we have in the city. And this right here, in my opinion, is also a hindrance to that CRA board being able to effectively do that. So I was hoping that the council would look at these financial documents and decide once and for all if we're going to forgive this loan, and it's already paid for. The city already paid for all these things, so, you know, why are we putting this burden on the CRA? And, you know, what's gonna stop the next loan for Main Street or South Side or Airport to do the same thing? I just don't think that, this is the way to treat our CRA, especially if they're gonna become autonomous. They need to have the funding to do the programs that they wanna do that's in their plan.
Yeah, I think the original amount of the loan was kind of,
Well, it's gone up.
I wouldn't call that a normal amount of loan for something that was actually being used. And that's basically why that they're paying interest only every year. They're not decreasing the loan, which I think was probably 3 or 4 times the amount of money that actually took to buy the building. So I agree with you. I don't think we should make the CRA suffer for something that was put on them without actually their decision making that. So I agree with you 100%. I think we should forgive this loan since we basically have gotten the money back just in the interest towards that. And that let's take the money that they're paying, that $40,000, and put it to use for the city, you know, to help the Main Street CRA. And, you know, we could do so many more things to improve what everybody else complains is Main Street, the mall, as well as the 3 or 4 cities on each sound of it, the businesses and all that. We could do so much more with that. So I have no problem with us forgiving that loan from the CRA to the city. But then we also have to think about if we do forgive that, and if they own the building and they sell the
Well, that's
building,
just
they get
it.
the money.
The building, well, the city could, look, they could still handle the marketing of that. They're not letting go of what to do with downtown viability, you know, economic development and those kind of things, beautification efforts and whatnot. So I believe that they still want to be involved with what goes on in the city. You know, if they want to put a facade grant on that building, if someone buys it, then that would be up to them to be able to do a facade grant, you know?
Absolutely.
But that would come out of that decision-making through that board, not this board. So, look, I think at the time when this was done, it's pretty common knowledge that the building was purchased with general fund money where you couldn't use it for residential facilities. So scurrying was done and it turned around, well, let's just make the CRA buy it. That way we, you know, are okay. But now that it's done, if it gets forgiven, that goes away.
But the building would remain in CRA ownership.
Well, it would remain, it's in the end, it's the city's, because if that board walks away, it comes back to us no matter what. So regardless of who owns the building, if the loan is forgiven, the loan is forgiven.
And the proceeds of the building, if it sells, goes to?
It, you know, let it go back to they're the ones that paid for it. It's out of the loan. They've already paid a big chunk of the loan already. So we can either just cut the slate right now and just
How
say.
much of the loan have they paid?
$350,000, plus they paid for the parking lot renewal and all of that.
They
So-
did pay for the parking lot as well?
Yep.
But they paid for the original cost of the building already?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, that's part of the loan.
Yeah.
The original building was purchased with the city funding, and then the loan was done within a couple of months of that, and then the parking lot was done with the loan.
So how many years ago was that?
2014, 15, it's whatever this resolution in here
Okay,
states.
so
15, 14.
Okay, so 6 years times 40,000.
Oh, yeah, 731,000 is what the CRA owes the city, even though that money has already been spent. I mean, even if we were to pay for the parking lot only, meaning the CRA were to pay for the parking lot, you'd still have a balance of about $630,000.
You know, the CRA paid for the parking lot, the mold remediation, some of the other stuff that went on there too, and the
Yeah,
roof.
and they've also bought 2 lots and built a parking lot where you want to put your basketball court up there where that restroom is. I believe that restroom was built with CRA money as well.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for that basketball court.
And I believe that was, I don't know what the price was on that, but there's a spreadsheet in here that shows the activity listing on those expenditures. Bottom line is that the loan has been used as a reservoir for CRA expenses that the CRA has never really had a say on how to spend that money. They could have easily taken that $800,000 and said, you know what? Yeah, we'll take this loan, but we want to do more facade grants. We want to do an entryway, gateway beautification. But instead, they're straddled or saddled with this loan for this building and 2 parking lots that were never in their plan.
Does anyone wish to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we forgive the loan effective immediately at the current balance.
Wait, 741,000?
Yeah, it's 731, 740, something like that. Is it 731, Danielle, or is it 741?
It's the 773.
So,
Well,
that's even better.
2019, well, as of July of 2019 is 773, 522.38.
We
And
have
Ju-
not made a payment for this year yet, so that would be your balance.
So this would be the balance?
773?
Yeah, 522.38.
I've heard a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second, but I have a question though. If we do this, and I don't see a reason why we shouldn't, then if they sell the building and they keep the money, then
How we gonna get?
I think the city should get back some of that money.
Well, the city should get back whatever they've earned from the CRA thus far.
I mean, because if you gave them several $100,000. for
Well,
the sale-
okay, but let's put it this way. The loan was for $866,000. There's only been, 4 payments thus far of $8,000 or so?
No, 3 payments.
3 payments.
Yeah, 3 payments. There was 30,000 of principal and 8,000 for interest.
Okay, so
So there's
that,
only been $90,000 paid.
120.
Thought you said 3 payments.
Yeah,
of 39,344.28 each
Each
payment.
one was
But I'm
about
talking about
39,000.
towards the principal.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you're looking at about
Oh.
90,000.
Yeah. So 120,000, how does 120,000 equate to $350,000 purchase price?
Yeah. That's my point.
They've paid $120,000, but we spent $350 buying the building. So how?
Right.
The building itself was
83,
266.
266, and then what else was spent on that building?
The
Plus
parking?
the parking lot, if you had the parking lot in.
And the city paid for the parking, or the CRA paid for the
It
parking?
was out of the loan.
CRA did.
The
So
CRA.
The 600,000 that was for the improvements of
So the city
building?
actually paid for it because the city gave them the loan.
Yes,
Yes.
but it,
So 266 plus how much for the parking lot?
oh, God, you're right.
117 or so?
It was a
Yeah,
lot.
it was a lot through
It was,
EDI.
it was
Okay.
a lot.
So the entire amount comes up to I think it's 383. I remember seeing that number.
That may have been the original purchase price of the building, I don't know.
I thought it was 363 myself.
It was something like that.
Well, 266 plus 117. That's whatever that adds up
Yeah.
to.
Well, like I said, I understand the forgiveness, but I also think that the city's owed some money whenever.
And I agree with
Whenever it
you.
gets sold.
I agree. So when it gets sold, let all the money go back to the city. That part doesn't make any difference. What I'm looking for is the loan forgiveness
Okay.
at this
If-
point,
if-
so that there are no more future payments on this loan from the CRA to the
And
city.
part of the motion is when the building is sold, all that money process goes back to the city.
That would be a deferment, not a release. It would be a deferment.
Okay, I'm good
Because
with
you're not
that.
releasing that money. You're just simply deferring it until the building sells.
That's
Okay.
fine. But the loan itself would have to be forgiven, whatever the balance is would be forgiven.
Or you just put it on hold.
Yeah, you're just putting it on hold.
I just don't want to charge the CRA anymore for anything else that's not authorized by the CRA and that's not in their plan.
Well,
Okay.
Should we do another resolution that would state that the loan is still there unless the building is sold, then it reverts back to the city?
The money, the cash, if the cash equivalent, not.
It
Can
just
you-
seems that a clean slate is such a easier thing to do. You stop the loan right now. The city still has, everything just goes back to the city as it is right now. The loan is sitting in a pot somewhere, basically, and it's not being used. What's the balance is not being used, and what has been used, it just all goes back to the city. And if the building sells, give it back to the
Well,
city.
can the city
Whatever
just-
whatever the CRA's paid, let it have been paid. We're done with it. They don't have to reimburse the
Can the
CRA
city
anything
just
else.
take it back with no further
Can we just?
money owed to the city from CRA? And then
defer-
the city owns the property, so
That's-
if it sells, it's definitely city's money.
Can we defer the payments? Just don't
Put the
have
payments
the
on hold.
CRA, yeah, to put it on hold, we can't do that.
But it's charging interest. They're charging interest on
Yeah,
something that they're not
but
using.
if we put it on hold, then you're not charging interest anymore.
Yeah, that's what I'm
That's what I'm saying.
asking.
Right, I don't know if there's any accounting issues associated with it, but if that's not, there are no accounting issues associated with it, then, you can do what you want with regard to that. You can put it on hold, you can transfer it to the city, and let the city sell it, or you can have an agreement whereby, if they sell it, the city gets, X amount of dollars back out of, the sale, or up to, or a percentage for that matter, so I just, leave that up to you, but you can do pretty much, you sit as, basically the same people sit as both boards.
Mhm.
So, but I would suggest you have an agreement making it clear so that there's no, problems later on.
Okay. So who's gonna write up this agreement?
Well,
Do you get paid
I
out of
don't
the
even know where
CRA?
to start right now. I don't know what
Just
you
say,
want.
We, the city of Avon Park, put the loan, the money of X number of dollars that's owed to the city
Yeah.
from the CRA on hold effective this date.
Well, I think it would probably be
I
this,
don't know.
the same type of agreement that we did for the community psychology people, whereby we fixed the roof. We said, if you sell your building, then, we get our money back type thing within a certain period of time. I would do something similar to that. It's not complicated.
I don't think there should be a certain, to me, just clean it off, just cut it off. This thing of paying us back in 3 years if it sells and you do it for some, that agreement you're talking about, Hopewell Academy, way back when? Yeah, that one's so old, yeah, no. I mean, this is just, we can simplify this just by saying, you know, eliminate the loan, let the CRA have paid what they've paid, not get it back, and if the building sells, it goes back to the city.
The building goes back to the city?
Yeah.
The proceeds
Oh,
from the building.
The proceeds of the building go back to the city. The CRA can still have input, because in the end, it's us that has the final say anyway at this point. But the CRA Advisory Board can still have input on, you know, what they would like to see coming into that building, and they're assisting us. I mean, they're doing all the heavy lifting for us. Why wouldn't we take their advice?
I just wouldn't want to end up in a situation where if the board becomes autonomous and it's not the same group of people that sits on
Right,
both
well,
boards.
before it becomes autonomous, we can get this cleaned up.
Okay, I'm fine with that. You have to come up.
Lady in the orange shirt, you look confused and tired.
Anna Marie Feeney, 234 East Camphor Street, Avon Park. Now, if there's a loan on a property, and let's say they decide they want to sell it, anyone who comes and looks at that property is going to look at that loan and say, is that going to be a part or an issue when if I try to buy this property?
Yeah.
I think it makes more sense for the city to just forgive the loan, take the building back, and sell it, and finally have done with it.
Yeah, clean slate.
Just enough, you know. The building's been sitting there for years empty, and the bouncing back and forth just doesn't make sense anymore. Just forgive the loan, take the building back, and put the for sale sign on it. Thank
Well,
you.
And we are, by the way, we had a CRA advisory board meeting, and they had a representative come, which I think the info's in here. Did I read that? Or maybe I missed that. A company came in and gave some ideas on what to do with the building. You were there. You were there.
I was there, yeah.
Anyway, I was there.
So,
But,
yeah, if the city takes it back, then there's nothing stopping the CRA from giving their recommendation. And of course, the council's gonna go along with it. So at this point in time, we can forgive the loan, the actual city take the building back.
Yep.
The CRA is gonna continue doing what they're doing, try to find a solution, and whenever they find a solution, transfer that to the council, and I'm sure we'll follow it out.
okay.
I agree.
I agree.
I do too.
So,
We did have a motion.
we have a
second.
motion and a
It's a lot
second,
easier.
but we probably want to change that. So we have a motion and a second, we
Do
need
we
to go.
still
ahead-
need an agreement?
Do we have to vote on that? Jerry?
Well, we have to vote. Yeah. We'll have to call a vote on it. Then we'll just want to change it.
Yeah, I want to change it, so. you know,
So
I'm-
as long as it's simplified is all
That's
I'm
fine.
saying. Okay,
Yeah.
just keep it as,
I'm going to vote no on that motion. Just tell
We'll have to call the roll.
So what are we voting on now? On the motion that was on the floor?
Yeah.
The original motion.
The one that we don't agree with.
Okay, I
vote
got
it,
you.
vote it down.
Okay. Councilmember Gray?
No,
Councilmember Sutherland?
No.
Councilmember Bernard?
No.
Deputy Mayor Spurlock?
No.
Mayor Anderson?
No.
Motion denied unanimous.
Is there a new motion?
Do exactly what the mayor said.
what
What was the
that?
process?
We would move to forgive the loan
Yep.
and take the ownership of the building back to the city of Avon Park.
I so move that motion.
There you go.
Second. I thought that's what I had said. Okay, never mind.
You just to forgive the loan, but we
Okay.
didn't actually take it back.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So we forgive the loan and take the ownership of the building back, then the CRA don't owe the city of Avon Park anything as of right now.
Correct, and they're going to,
once- And we take the ownership of the building back. So once the building is sold, the money would come to the city?
Yeah.
Correcto.
Okay.
correct. And the advisory board is gonna continue with their seeking,
Advisory.
yeah, seeking their advisory of how to
Absolutely.
market that building.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further
Just
questions?
that one.
Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Gray?
Yes.
Councilmember Sutherland?
Yes.
Councilmember Bernard?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Spurlock?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Thank you. Item number 11, discussion of budget preparations for fiscal year 2021.
Yes, as we all know, it's budget time is right around the corner all over again. And even though we don't have a finance director full-time just yet, we have an interim, which later on in here is a job description for one. I just wanted to put it out there that I wanted to see where we stood right now, if there's any report that we can get on a quarterly basis that tells us where we are with our current budget.
Working on it.
Thank you. And as well as having the council kind of think in the very near future what we need to be doing for the future. I have been talking, and this goes back into item 12, which I guess if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to combine this with item number 12.
Sounds good.
I spoke to the building official for the county today, and the county collects about $63,000 in fees in permitting and issues. They had 900
city?
from the city of Avon Park. Anything that has an A, I was surprised to hear that. A means Avon Park, C means county. So I called him back a second time just to confirm that, and he said it was 63,000. Now that was this recent year. That doesn't mean that it's going to be that in the future, because it does fluctuate depending on the economy. But they had 900 inspections for building inspections only. That doesn't include code enforcement issues. So what I was going to get at was, I have no objection in raising taxes as long as I know what the taxes are going to be used for. During the last budget, we were proposed incremental tax increase, but there was no plan to use those taxes. If we know that there's going to be a need to really revamp our code enforcement department, which I believe it really needs to have that done, then I would like for this council to consider that if we take back inspections and hire a building official that serves as well as a code enforcement official, that will really fix a lot of the problems that we have in regards to the communication with the county. It's not their job to review our code. It's only their job to review code for building. So if we brought that all in-house, it's not a big money maker, but it'll at least get us in control of our destiny when it comes to our code department. I was looking at some job descriptions for the code officers, and it certainly spells out in there that it's required that they know code ordinances or land development regulations. And I think that there needs some training in there as well. But overall, it doesn't matter if we hire 20 more code enforcement officers if they don't know what they're doing, because they're not getting trained sufficiently. So it starts from the bottom up, top down, and I'm hoping that if we put this as a way to get a better handle on the appearance of our city, then we just have to make a monumental change, and I don't know any other way to do it. I don't see an incremental change by giving the county one more task and us taking one back, and Central Florida Regional Planning doing this, which they're doing a lot of the permitting right now. But let's face it, we don't have Central Florida Regional Planning driving our streets looking at code enforcement issues or other LDR issues. We have to be proactive and tell them what those things are. If we can't fix those ourselves, then what's the sense of having a permitting person there right now? So I'm not trying to put blame on anything. I just think that the system has been flawed for so long that we've just kind of settled for what we have. When you talked about a police officer, wouldn't that be great to have that person be also code enforcement? You know, I personally think, and that's something that we can mull over, or the new city manager can help do. But I also know that as of tonight, there's a $25,000 budget adjustment of found money. There's also money left over from the buyback program. There's other additional fundings in there where the budget was kind of fluffed up a little bit that we know is in there under the current tax system. So, you know, whether we raise it for code enforcement issues or to hire a director for code enforcement or planning and zoning that would be over code and building is all stuff that we just need to discuss. But it's a change, I think, in our perception on, are we going to bring the service back? Because for too many years, we've just let it slide, and I think our community reflects our lack of oversight in that area. How many complaints on code enforcement do you get? On LDR issues, I get them all the time, and I forward them over to Kim. I've been doing that since I've been here. So,
You know, let me just add, can I just add
Yeah,
to
go
what
ahead.
she's saying? I kind of like agree with Maria, but however, my thought as far as raising taxes, we have enough money into the budget that if we had a legitimate, true budget, we wouldn't have to raise taxes, because there is money there. That she just said about this $25,000
Yeah,
that
that's-
was found. Okay, and then there's if the fees that we pay out can be used as well.
Correct, that would be
So-
but we can't rely on that
know.
amount because, you know, the market changes and people's activity.
Building is really hot right now.
Right.
so.
Exactly.
So you'll be getting a lot, but we don't know where it'll be in 3 or 4 years. That's why I'm saying, you know, if we can secure what we know is the extra funding that's in the budget, then that'll give us a baseline of how much money we would need if we
If
needed to
we-
raise it.
there you go.
And that's why I'm saying, you know, let's find out. That's why I wanted a quarterly report to see exactly where we are. And of course, we're not going to count the funding from vacant positions because those will be consistent again next
Yeah.
year. And then you got to take into account raises and things like that on the union and all. So, you know, if we're going to have to hire a police officer, then that's going to come out of the general fund. So there's another expense right now that we're talking about that might be partially paid by the state. So, I mean, there's a lot of moving targets right now on this issue, but I just want the council to see whether or not you would be in favor of bringing back code enforcement internally, building inclusive. You know, I don't think that the county has any feel either way. You know, I didn't sense that from the building official. It's, in the end, he realizes it's our decision to go about the way we want to go about it. I know that we would have to communicate with other cities that do this all in-house. This is not a money-making scheme. It'll probably never break even. But then again, you know, what price are we going to put on the appearance of our city to forsake something else? So I just think that we really need to put a big focus on the whole LDR component and planning and zoning, and, you know, bring back a lot of that in-house, because only we can do it when we can communicate amongst ourselves, and right now that's just not,
Happening.
it's not
Well,
happening.
I think the only reason that we've had a LDR issue lately is because of the turnover. You know, there was many, many years at the city where we did not have a LDR issue. And it was because we had more consistency. We had employees that carried over year after year that went on and on and on. Only in the last, 6 to 8 years have we had all this controversy and turnover?
6 to 8 years is a long time.
Yeah.
Right, but what has happened in that time? We've gone through how many city managers? We've gone through how many upper level staff? I mean,
Unless
that's
you
been the
hire
issue.
somebody that has LDR experience. I mean, I'm not looking at them to be, you know, the gift of LDR. I'm looking at someone that can carry about, you know, follow the job description, which
No,
requires
My
that.
point in saying it is to provide the most consistency possible.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, we're dealing with customers, right? So we have citizens that are customers, we have companies that are customers that have to do business in the city. What is the most straightforward way for them to do business? In my experience, and from what I've heard from a lot of contractors, they very much enjoy dealing with the county because they are consistent. You can go anywhere in the county other than inside the city limits of Sebring and Lake Placid, and you get the same service.
And that just answered the question. The county is consistent, which means that we are not. We don't, you know, how many more
How are we
things-
not consistent?
Code doesn't understand building. Code doesn't understand code.
No, but what I'm saying is we're benefiting from the consistency of the county by allowing them to be our building official.
No. The county only comes and inspects when it's done, if they come get a permit.
That's not true.
So that's what?
Are you a contractor?
Am I a contractor?
Yeah. Are you familiar
No,
with
no, I
how
just
the
know what-
process works?
I know what he said when he was here last week. I know what I had problems with. I mean, he comes and inspects if the permit's applied for.
Right. And if it's not applied for,
Hey,
He
if
don't
it's
do
not
it.
applied
He
for,
still- he still
it doesn't
inspects.
bother him. No. It doesn't bother him. If it's finished, he's gone. He walks off.
that's not what he said.
It's not supposed to, but that's
That's
what
not what he
happens.
said. That's not how it
Well, that
works.
might not be. Wait a-
That's not what he said at all.
I thought we made it pretty clear at the last meeting that the flaw, the weakness is on the city's side. It's
Exactly.
not on the county's side.
Exactly.
You
Well,
know,
I got
Right. So why would you want to take away the good part of what the county is providing to then take it internally?
because
Let me answer that, because we need to fix our part. We need to fix what we're doing.
So you want
That's
to take
what
on
I'm saying.
more to fix our part.
We
We
need
can't
to
fix
fix
what
our
we have
part.
now, but you think taking on another department is going to make that easier.
What we're gonna do, allow our code enforcement department stay not fixed?
Why can't they be trained in these areas?
That's what we're saying. How,
Mm-hmm.
my thought is train them, get them to do the right thing, you
Okay.
know? In order to do that,
So-
make them accountable for it. That's my thought, you know?
Well, you're talking about two different things.
All I know is that
You're
I
talking
get.
about hiring a building official, and then you're talking about training your code enforcement people. Those are two very different things.
True enough. Well,
If
my
you had
thought
a,
is-
yeah, but if you had a building official that served at simultaneously as a code official, then you would be able, and you know, someone that understands the LDR. If we keep what we have, it's not going to work. What was the rate of passing the most recent tests?
What tests?
None.
None of
Thank
them
you.
passed,
What
okay?
tests?
Code enforcement certifications.
Okay.
We don't
So, you know, I don't want to just willy-nilly hire, you know, I want to be able to see that we have staff that are fully trained in doing what they do. If you speak to Sebring, for example, they have the entire department within their own bounds. They control their permitting process, they control it all, and, you know, we don't. And
That's
when
not
you,
always the most user-friendly application, though.
well, then that's just it. If, that's what I'm talking about. Look at the budget, see what we have, see how much money is left in our budget right now that has not been expended. See whether or not any of these things are feasible, and if we can get it under control, then I think our city would be a lot better for it. There's a disconnect regardless, even though the county is not at fault. If we had someone on our side that was looking on our payroll at a particular building that didn't go through the permitting process, they would be able to point it out right then and there. This didn't go through code. It's not the county's job, and they are not calling our code department and saying, hey, did you know these people didn't have a setback? No, they're just approving the building. So, you know, someone with better, a building official would be able to catch that at the same time, make sure that they go through the process, whereas right now the county is not doing that. They don't have to because it's not their job.
Yeah, but we're also not upholding our two sides of it, which is code enforcement and LDR.
So, I mean, what's the problem? You want to leave it the way it is? You think what we have is adequate?
I think that if-
Ask
I
any
think-
business on Main
listen,
Street,
I
I'm
didn't
just
say
saying.
that.
Ask any business on Main Street, what is their biggest priority? Clean up Avon Park. Every person that calls me, look at every email I've sent to the city manager in the last month. The predominant amount of emails has to do with what? Code and LDRs, and in part of the LDR comes the building code. We have so many buildings in this town that were built outside of the bounds of the law, of our own policies and our ordinances, that it's gonna take someone to go in there and be able to inspect them. I know that we are allowed to do that with, what was it called, Jerry? You have to have some kind of a legal thing to get in there and inspect stuff, that there is no
Inspection
limitation.
warrant.
Yeah, so you know what, let's
So
fix it.
how does this make Avon Park a better place to live? So basically what you're advocating for is that you want to charge someone with going and doing inspections all over the town to try to penalize buildings that are already built, to basically attack people. That's what this is going to turn into.
Oh my God, no, we want them to
You
comply with the law.
you can't even train the people that we have to do code enforcement.
No, we want them
We
to comply.
aren't adequately doing LDRs as well.
The county
And that-
charges for permits too. What are you talking about? We're not gonna be imposing
ma'am.
more fees.
You have to name and address in the microphone, please.
Christina Daniels.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm at 717 Oak Lane Street.
You will have to talk to that mic, I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Now we
I've got
can.
a little raspy
Okay.
voice, so that doesn't help either. I've lived in Avon Park for 21 years. My grandfather lived here way back in 50s, 60s, 70s. Worked for the Texaco gas station with Mr. Adams. I have a relationship to Avon Park, but I can't stand living here because of what you're saying. I am a rental property owner, and I have received now my rental property permit that I have to have on 2 properties that, as you said, have been built and built for a long time. I've owned them for years, and now I'm being told that I have to allow the city of Avon Park to go into these rental properties for people that deserve the right of privacy so that they can inspect them. I have the list that's 3 pages long of all the different things that they're going to be looking for, but in doing so, are they qualified to look for these things? Your code enforcers, I don't know that they know how to look for all these things that is on this list, even to the point of, is it properly configured for the zoning district? What does that mean? What does that mean to me as a landlord? So my big deal about this is I don't have a problem keeping my property looking the way it's supposed to look. I actually got a violation probably about 6 months ago or 8 months ago when Mr. Flowers was still here, and I had a conversation with him for a cut in a screen door. I live off of Ruth and Winterford. Those houses around there don't even come close to a city code ordinance. And yet I'm now getting told that I have to have a permit to rent that I've been renting for years. And I don't think it's right for the city to make the tenant have to allow somebody to come into their house.
I don't think that the rental permits allow, I mean, isn't it, Jerry, by law that you don't have to force anybody? It's incumbent entirely on the tenant to let someone come in and
I have
inspect.
2 violations for not having the permit. And the permit, when I came to talk to the gentleman in the code enforcement,
Oh, you're talking about the permit, the rental inspection permit?
right,
Okay.
they're saying I have to do it.
In rental permit programs are not illegal. There are some areas that where it needs to have competent inspectors, and I've had a conversation with the commissioners about my concern about that, to make sure that they're done properly. They can't, by the permit, mandate that you allow them to enter.
Right,
But
but
they
then
can't-
I'm
they
gonna
can
get
speak
fined
to
if
the-
I don't allow it,
They can
according to
speak
what
to
they're saying.
the tenant, and the tenant is, if they allow them in, there's nothing you can say about that.
Right, I mean, I
that
can't
they
even
let-
go into their property without
But-
the proper notice, and a sheriff can, or police cannot go into their property
If
without.
they allow the inspector to inspect, that's good. If the inspector can prove up an inspection or warrant, then they can get it, even with the tenant's disapproval, they can get entry to the property.
Okay,
and the
but
property.
if they don't allow them to go in, then where does that put me? When I'm being told I have a violation?
I'm having a conversation with them on that. So
Okay.
that's
I mean,
gonna change.
I'm all about
I
listen.
submitted an ordinance change several months ago. It was never implemented. And,
Well, originally this was implemented from what I remember from my husband, because my husband usually gets these and reads them. I retired 7 years ago, and I'm getting back involved in the property because I am a stickler on making sure that the property looks good. I mean, to the point where we argue a lot about it. Avon Park needs a lot of help, but I don't think your code enforcers really understand what they're looking at. I have a house on Palmetto backed up to the subsidized living, and in this little list of things, it's asked about if the grass or the weeds are over 6 inches high. Well, against the fence that belongs to the city, the grass and weeds are this high. So you want to make sure my rental property next to it doesn't have weeds 6 inches high when the city's allowed it to get this high? So it's not consistent.
Yeah.
well, I'm not gonna argue that the point of the grass issue, and I think you're wrong on that, but nevertheless, I don't think that you're gonna be taken to the code enforcement with regard to the issues that, not of the permit at this time, because we're having a conversation about it. They may or may not decide to continue with a rental inspection program.
Okay.
And
But
I do agree with the fact that you need to have competent people doing it, and they have to do it in the right way. And we're having that conversation right now. So, I mean, I would not, you're not gonna.
I'm gonna ask a question. Has anybody read this list of, the 3-page list of what they're inspecting? Not anywhere on here, because I was told it's for quality of living. Not anywhere on this page does it ask if it's got bugs, roaches, rats. It's all about the building itself. To me, quality of living is the inside needs to be clean, not the grass 6 inches tall. So.
All right, well, that's a different issue. I mean, that's for them to decide what they want to have with regard to rental inspections. But nevertheless,
Well,
we're having
I
that
just wanna make sure
conversation.
I'm
Nothing's
not
gonna
going to
happen
have to
right
go in
now.
front of the
Nothing's,
magistrate and get fined,
noth-
just like what you guys
nothing's
are
gonna
talking
happen
about.
at the special magistrate right now. Okay, I've had that conversation with the city manager. We're not doing that today.
Okay.
As it stands today.
Okay.
Doesn't mean it's never gonna happen. That'll be the decision of the council.
Okay, well, another
Okay.
question. How will I know that I'm not going to be, I haven't got a notice saying disregard these.
Well,
I just got this one
Yeah.
the other day, January 14th.
we just had a conversation last week, so I'm
But
sure.
I think you owe it to the landlords to let them know that you're holding off for the moment.
Yeah.
Because I take this seriously.
Yeah, I understand.
I've never done anything
We
in
just had the
violation of
conversation
anything.
last week. I'm sorry,
Okay.
but they have not had a chance to send anything out yet, but they will.
Okay, well, may I say this too? We were never notified to begin with that the ordinance was made several years ago to the landlord that they were going to try to start inspecting. We never received anything saying that the city was gonna do that.
Well,
So there's a miscommunication and a lot of stuff going on here.
Perhaps that would be a wise thing to do and prudent and a good thing for the city's customers. It's not required by law, but it would be a good thing to do and something you should consider. If
Well,
you
I think,
decide to
I
go
think it would
with
be a courteous, otherwise, what's the point of me having
Well,
a property?
they're
Why
not gonna find you in violation immediately. They're gonna give you a warning first, and then you
Right.
can go down and sign up. Nothing's happened at that point.
You're not
So-
letting me finish. What I'm trying to say is, I'm all about doing the right thing, but you, as a city council, needs to do the right thing by the people living here. Otherwise, there's no point in me keeping my property here. Why would I wanna do that?
Okay.
Why would I wanna live here? Why would I wanna have property here?
That's-
You're-
that's-
You're penalizing somebody for trying to do the right thing.
All right, well, that you're directing to them, because that's a political question, not a legal one, and I don't make that decision. They
Well-
can direct the city manager to do so if they feel like you're right.
Right.
Okay, but you're directing that at me as if I've
No,
done something wrong. I'm
You're
just
the one
simply
speaking
saying.
to me, so yes, I'm directing it to you.
So I'm simply saying that, yeah, they don't have to do that under the law, but it would be, to me, it would be a wise thing to do if you know who the landlords are, if there's some list of them somewhere. But are they gonna have to go out and figure out every single house, which one's for rent and which one's not? They're not gonna do that. It's your responsibility to know what the law is. But like I said, that aside, they should,
Well, if
do
you
what they
pass the
can
law-
to figure out who's a
Okay,
landlord.
If you
and who's
pass the law, how will I know when it's been passed? Where am I supposed to look for it?
not. Well, no,
Where
they
am I
change-
supposed to go to find out the notification?
Community code?
It's just like any law that passes, you have responsibility to know what it is. Hopefully, like I said, that there's some effort made before, but they're not gonna go out and check every property in the city and say, well, let's see, now, I think this one's being rented. Who's it being rented by? I don't know, let's find out. That would take them forever to do.
Well, let me
But I
tell
think
you-
if, with the extent that they know who is a landlord, then they can notify those people with courtesy, but not with law.
Again, where do you go to know that the law has been passed? I
It's-
mean.
it's-
It would be a
it's-
public meeting, one of these meetings, you would look at the
Okay.
agenda,
So
they
in other
post
words,
it.
and
what I
it's-
need to do is keep
Twice
up
a
with
month.
the
We meet
council
twice a month.
meetings and see what's on the agendas to see.
Or you
that,
can go on,
you
it's
know,
Muni.
And how many citizens really do that?
Well,
lot.
every law is in the Muni code.
A lot of them
I'm sure
do.
you've heard ignorance of the law is no excuse, but yeah, municode.com is a site on where Avon Park lists all of its laws, and you can look under there.
The
It's
link
not
is on
very
our website.
user-friendly, I'll say that. Let me ask you, Danielle, how soon after an ordinance is passed does it get on Muni code? What's the time frame? A month?
Yeah, maybe a month.
But in listening to everything going on prior to this, you're all sitting here saying that Avon Park is not being consistent in how they're handling this.
I
stuff.
100% agree with you.
So, in my defense, and I'm sorry that you said it's ignorance, I'm ignorant because I don't know the law.
That's
And you
not what
did
I
say
said.
that, yes, you did.
That's not how I said. If you like to take
That's
that one,
okay,
that's
that's okay.
fine.
But
continue.
like I said, I've been here 21 years, and I do everything possible to do the right thing, to be a good citizen in this city. So when you start getting these violations without knowing that you're gonna get violated, it's very disturbing when you don't know that you've done something wrong. And to say that I have to have a permit because now I violated a city ordinance, it's disturbing. So I agree that you need to have training for your code enforcers, so they understand what they're actually looking for. A cut in a screen door does not mean it's really a violation. There's stuff around me that's way worse than what a cut in a screen door is. And just simple things that make sense. If you're gonna make it, and then force what you're asking the people to do. I mean, I was told you have over $1 million worth of sites, violations that you can't collect on because nobody's doing it. So I just feel like I'm being penalized for being a good person where other people are getting by with not doing the right thing. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming. That was a good first step.
Okay, back to the,
So getting back to this issue, I'm not looking for a motion. It says NA right there. I'm just looking for input on how to fix a problem that we know has been around for at least 8 years. And it really has nothing to do with turnover. It has to do, if every city administrator were to quit, are you telling me that staff is going to sit there not knowing what to do? No, they should know what to do, but at the
The
same
staff
time.
has changed as well, that's what I'm getting
Well,
at.
not necessarily. I mean, some of those people have been there for a long time as well, and we have others that have stepped in that have been here before that were rehired. So, you know, we do have some individuals that can do some of the job. What I'm getting at is we're missing a component. It's a piece of the puzzle that we don't have. And, you know, we're still gonna have complaints no matter what we do. If we stay with the county, I know we'll still have them when we are internally, but at least we'll own those. It will be on us. And, you know, if we can't get it cleaned up the way it is now and addressing all of these illegal buildings, all these illegal structures and stuff, we know right now that the code won't be prepared to do that at least 5 or 6 years down the line. They just won't. This is the type of stuff that you learn while you're on the job. So, you know, hiring somebody that knows the building code, and it could be a retired contractor, that's looking to do something like this,
Most building officials are.
right? So, you know, what's wrong with doing it in-house? I see nothing wrong with it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least we tried it, and we can
You know
say
what?
that we tried it.
Didn't we have a building department
We
one
did.
time
We
before?
That's
sure
when
did.
SY was here.
We sure did.
Yeah. When we did,
Because there wasn't a lot of building going on.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. You don't need a full-time building inspector. Y'all, you need somebody that can go, if they did 900 inspections at the county last year, which was one of the busiest years they've had, that'll keep that person busy for sure, but at the same time, they could also fill in the shoes of a code enforcement officer. So, you know, it would be more of a, administrative position versus, you know, it would just require somebody with a little bit more education.
I just think we have to train the staff that we have.
And
We
we're-
can't take on a new project until you've mastered what you've got.
Who's gonna train them?
It's the
Who's,
oversight.
who's
There's
gonna
just-
train them?
Yeah.
Find somebody that will.
That's what I'm saying.
There is no way to train them. I mean, it's.
Well, okay, well, what staff member do you need to train them? Who do you need to hire?
You want the current employees that we have to be trained, but who's gonna train them that has the knowledge that they need to know?
How do you know the person you hire has the knowledge that they need to know?
Well, you put it in the job requirement.
Right.
And
So
so
hire a
it's-
person that can to do the job.
I think that's what the commissioner is.
I'm not saying that we should have a building department. They're two very different things, Jerry. I'm simply saying if you want them to have that building knowledge, hire someone in the code enforcement that has the building knowledge and they can train them.
We couldn't have them both combined together, building and code?
Let's see how well it goes there, Stanley.
Well,
I think it's gonna turn into a hit squad is what I think it's gonna turn into.
A
it's gonna
what?
turn into a what?
It's gonna turn into, there's gonna end up being a handful of people that get penalized because it's not gonna be consistent.
And right
Why
now, there's
would
a
it not be
handful of people
consistent?
that get forgiven because of, it works both ways. How is it that Sebring can do this so flawlessly, seamlessly, and we can't? We're the same size.
They haven't had the turnover. They've had a much more stable council. They've had a much more stable administration. The staff members do not turn over every other year.
Because they know their functions, they
Could
know
it-
what they're
could-
doing. I mean,
could
you know,
it-
Our
what we have
problem is
just
one of
doesn't work.
stability.
What we have just doesn't work.
so how do we fix it, Garrett?
If there's a problem in code enforcement and they need training, hire someone to train them. But taking on a new department, taking on the building department, I think you're shooting yourself in the foot.
You think that'll fix it?
Have you spoken to Mr. Longshore?
Have I spoken to him?
Mhm.
I've spoken to him many times, not about this specifically.
I'm just wondering if you'd spoken to him.
I'd be happy to if you'd like me to.
Well, you know, he didn't really give me any clear yay or nay. He just said it was up to the council. So, I mean, he's just remaining very neutral, actually.
But if we're
Um,
taking in $62,000 a year.
That's just this
and
year,
I
Stanley.
know this year, but that's close to paying for on top of what we could supplement by combining. That would pay that official.
Let me ask you this. Why do you suppose that we have someone who gives us advice on our LDRs? Why do you think that we have Central Florida Regional Planning?
Who gave us the advice?
Central Florida Regional Planning, why do you think that we've hired them? Because we can't do it ourselves, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So that's what we did with the county. It made more sense to have them do our building department.
We're almost a resource center in Avon Park. We outsource about everything we do. And why is that? Why is that? You want me to name it? The past city manager. That's the whole reason. We got rid of the police department. dang near got rid of the fire department. We just cut and we cut and we cut.
Right.
Whenever I was a kid, we had a building department. I know how the economy's changed. You say you want to see Avon Park grow.
I do.
How are we going to ever grow, being a resource center like we are?
Consistency, Stanley. You take
Ain't no
on one at a time.
There won't be no more.
If what you have is still broken, how can you take on anything else?
Well, we're only taking one thing on.
We are.
Look,
But
it's
what
just
we
a
have is still broken.
consideration.
What
It's
else
just
is
a
broken?
consideration. It's just a consideration, and we're not
All right.
having to make a decision tonight. I think this is a discussion that we can have again at some point, and maybe with other information at that time. But you also got to keep in mind that we did used to have a planning and zoning official. We did not have Central Florida Regional Planning, and there wasn't a lot of activity. So that person went away because that job went away, and that's when we started with a consulting Central Florida Regional Planning
Right.
Council. So we pay them $25,000 a year, and what do? They conduct our P&Z meetings. Other than that, they review some plans. So we still need them to review those plans. The county doesn't review our building plans. They only come in after the fact, after we've gotten the permit, and they come in and look at the finished product.
As long as the purpose is to make Avon Park an easy place to do business with and an easy place to live in and not a gotcha group, I'm okay with it.
Well, I think we would find out rather quickly if there's a gotcha group. But like I said, that works both ways. I agreed with her. Why is she getting a complaint on a slit in her window when there's tons of other broken windows in town that I don't know whether they get addressed or not. It's like hit or miss. So
Right.
yes,
But that doesn't have
consistency
anything
is
to do
very
with-
important.
With building, I mean, we've got deficiencies that are so obvious, it's ridiculous.
Right, we do.
You
But
can- you can
again,
drive down any street and find a house that's got a code enforcement violation.
I think we have to put an effort to our community that we care, because doesn't matter whether we had high turnover or not. The bottom line is we're not getting it done. And if we're not getting it done, we need to fix it. And I don't think that training 2 individuals is gonna do the job. I think that we just need to have something that's a one-stop shop. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but we cannot just keep as it is and just pretend that we're gonna train and train. There may be turnover with those individuals. They might get trained and leave. We don't know that, but their consistency is not there. If we take ownership of it, then it's ours. But people have come to a conclusion in this community. They have realized what our weakness is, and they take advantage of it. And they know that if they don't have to build with a permit, that all they have to do is get the building inspector to come and inspect it. He's done.
It's not the way it works.
It has been working that way, though. I mean, that's exactly what he talked about. He got called in after a building was done, and that was the end of it.
That building got a permit, Maria.
That building what?
It got a permit.
It did not have a permit.
He told you it had a
No,
permit.
no, wait. He was talking, you remember when I did my hand like
Yeah,
this? I
he was
said,
talking
you're
about another
talking
one."
about 2 incidents, right? He said, yes, building number 1 got a permit, but that was years ago. Okay?
Since
wait
you
a minute now.
complained, it got a permit.
No, sir. Wait, let me back up. You are exactly correct, but that was on the house. I'm talking about the outhouse.
The accessory
That does not
structure.
have a permit, sir.
The code enforcement people have sent them a warning saying that they need to get a permit, an after-the-fact permit, apply for that.
Right, and as
If they're-
built.
But if they're qualified, if it qualifies for an after.
Right.
If it doesn't qualify for that, they got real problems.
But who verifies that? The building department, right?
Building departments.
And have they gone out?
Not the county building department, our code enforcement, you're wrong, it's our code
Well,
enforcement.
that's what I said,
Yeah,
yeah.
code
But it
enforcement.
could- But he did agree that, that after-the-fact permit would be possible. But, usually there's a penalty for not getting the permit in the first instance. I'm not sure that they got penalized for that. But they've been warned that they have to get a permit.
Right.
Now, if they can't get a permit, like I said, there's an even bigger problem.
Right.
If it doesn't fit our LDRs or, building code.
It has to get a special exception, just like a
Right.
business that's illegal. So if that's the case, that's the case, that's the process. But the other part of the coin is this, Jerry, is that all these unpermitted buildings don't pay taxes because they never went through the permit process where it gets reported to the state, to the tax collector. So we have numerous buildings that are rented out and they don't pay taxes on it. Whereas I pay taxes on mine and everybody else does. I don't know what the volume is or what the dollars are, but that's another reason why people don't get permits is they just figure, you know what, I'm gonna turn my shed into a rental property. They're all
She
over
shed.
town, and they don't pay taxes on it. And that's also inappropriate.
Once you're done, please. Ask if we can have a 5-minute break when you're done.
I think I've stated what I wanted to say. I just
And
think
I
that,
understand what you're saying, Maria,
Yeah.
because we have, well, like one person that applied for a resurfacing, a permit to redo the roof. Instead of doing that, they added another 2 rooms, or they was in the process of adding rooms. So when it was called in, they said, oh yeah, they got a permit to resurface their roof or whatever they do it. But then when the code enforcement people went out there and they said, well, you're adding more space. You don't have a permit for this.
And what was the result of that?
They stopped.
did you call that one in?
Yes, I did.
I called it in as well. And that particular building just
Yes.
has add-ons and add-ons and
Exactly.
add-ons
Yeah.
and add-ons.
What
So
you're getting at is we have a process, and the process works.
when we
When
call
we
it in,
did
when we call it in, when we call it in.
What she's saying is that there's a whole bunch of them out there that's not quant.
Yeah.
And then I think that's what he's saying.
Gotcha. Are we done with item 11 and 12?
Well, I just want this to be considered for the next budget. You know, when we come back, you can bring some numbers, Danielle, on what the balances are in terms of unused
You're only gonna
general
get-
fund.
You're only gonna get the first quarter.
That's fine, but at least we'll have an idea of some of the extra money in there, right?
Okay.
But I just, wait. How many of you would be interested in seeing whether or not we could reconstitute a building department like we had in the 80s and in the 90s?
I would
when-
be. I
Not
would
me.
be. I would
I
be.
think I would, just to see what it would cost.
Okay.
I gotta go to the bathroom.
Are we done with item 11 and 12? Are we done with item 11 and 12?
We're done.
All right, we're gonna take a 5-minute break.
And